over to Manit sir, and I'm coming up with the questions which audience has raised with us. So may I
Go
have
ahead.
the question?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. So the very first question is, how do you measure what students learn and how effectively they have applied their academic skills?
Sure. So let me split this into two parts.
Sir.
One is around the academic itself, so around literacy, around numeracy. So for everything, we've got our learning standards in place and very detailed rubrics. So how do children demonstrate that they have learned what we want them to learn? So if you see, this is a journey that begins from relevance. So why are we learning what we're learning? First, that question needs to be answered for the child. That question needs to be answered for the teacher. Why am I teaching what I'm teaching? So when we understand that, then the next question is, how are we going to teach and what exactly are we going to teach? And then how are we going to know that the child has learned it? So what is worth learning? How will you make that learning happen? And then how will you know whether the learning has happened or not? So assessments could be, if I could pick an example, let us say of reading, we use the Fontes and Pinnell, which is the global benchmark for this. Then we use a lot of assessments for numeracy that are developed internally. So that's one part of it, looking at numeracy and literacy. Then the other part is the skills, the social and creative intelligence skills that I spoke about, or what we cover in the human framework, the SEL work. Is the child developing in each one of these areas or not, whether it is the 21st century skills or other areas? We actually assess it more through application. Yeah, when kids come together in projects, you'll often find that they take on a whole project. Like I shared about the bicycle project, they'll take on this whole project, they'll make a project plan, they'll make small teams, assign tasks, hold each other accountable. So it's you pretty much see everything in action, and as teachers are observing and playing the role of facilitators and mentors in the process, they're not necessarily teaching all the time. They're actually seeing whether the kids are meeting what we have on our rubrics. Prerna, do you want to add something to it?
Yeah, but also there are different ways of collecting this data. So one is, of course, teacher observations. Also, students' own reflection and self-assessment of achieving and how close they are to the learning targets. Students are also aware of the fact that their work needs to be collated and collected in the form of a portfolio, which is the most authentic evidence of their struggles and achievements. So the idea is that students become leaders of their own learning and are able to articulate for themselves where they are and where they need to go. That requires continuous reflection. So, this thought about you don't learn from experience, you learn from the reflection of that experience. I think that's so deeply embedded in the pedagogy that after every stage of learning, there is reflection, self-assessment. Success criteria is offered to the students right in the beginning so that it's clear for them where they are going. These are a few of the ways in which.
Yeah, so it's pretty clear, Manit sir, that you give the complete project in the hands of student, and as Prerna said, that student-led classrooms are means the practice of your school. So it's absolutely giving the clear picture why you talk about experiential schools. So thank you for this answer, and I hope my viewers have got the complete just how they apply the measures to find out the effective implementation in students. So coming to my next question, from a practical standpoint, what are some of the pitfalls of the experiential education?
me, it's the best form of education. Of course, not the easiest to implement. Uh, Definitely, there are challenges, and again, I'd say the challenges are both adaptive and technical. Uh, the technical are often easier to scale because there are plenty of resources available. There are plenty of good mentors available across the globe who can help someone who's wanting to learn and who's wanting to shift. But the adaptive part of the challenge is particularly demanding because it's just hard work, and it takes a while to get used to the idea. But like Prerna said, once you taste success in this, you can't go back to doing the same thing because you'll find it absolutely meaningless. Uh, so often teachers who've taught in our school also, sometimes for higher positions or something, they go out, they generally come back after a while, or they start transforming classes wherever they go, and wherever they don't get the space to do the kind of work they've done, it becomes challenging. Of course, finding people with that kind of an attitude is challenging, but we work with a very strong belief that just like every student has potential, every teacher has potential. Given the right guidance, the right support, the right space to experiment, uh, we can all become great experiential educators.
Absolutely, sir. So again, this it's kind of a repetition of the same question. How will you do an experiential learning with with an unexperienced teacher? And Prerna ma'am is the example of that.
Yeah, that's a great question. All I can tell you is that Prerna shared an interesting slide. The first thing is for school leaders to get out of the space that I know, and unfortunately, everyone as a school leader wears this burden of knowing. You're expected to be a master genius at everything, and it's rare to be able to go out and say I don't know. For us, it happened pretty easily because I really did not know. I wasn't from the education space to begin with, so I would walk into the classrooms and teachers would throw a problem, and I would say, well, I don't know, let's figure out. So the whole culture was around figuring out. When we do that, we give people the space to be vulnerable. We give people the space to make mistakes. We demonstrate that belief in people that inspires them, motivates them to go beyond themselves and find something meaningful for themselves. So I'd say the essential part of this journey is work on the self, and the technical part can then follow. It's like saying if somebody wants to learn, they'll figure out themselves. It's not rocket science. Technically, it's not so hard to do this. It's not so hard to create a good project. You can keep refining your skills, but it's just having the hunger to change. And if school leaders have that hunger, this can definitely happen.
True, sir, true. The grit and the zeal can definitely make you to learn such things. If you have that, then only you can be Prerna Manit, who is still there and working and on and on. Absolutely. So our next question is, are we in the business of education or education as a business?
We're in the business of teaching children. We're in the business of transforming lives.
Yes.
We're in the business of making a difference. We're in the business of building a nation.
Yes.
And this is not a race. This is really not a race. We're in the business of finding our humanity, transforming our lives, and in that process, transforming the lives of children. Is education a business? Should it be a business? Well, personally, I would not like to send my children to a school that works on pure passion or pure charity, because it will be very hard for me to hold them accountable then. Personally, I think there is a lot of malpractice in education, and that malpractice is caused because there are structures and laws that do not make sense at this point of time for many people, and the only way forward is to open up the sector. That will clean up the sector, also encourage more corporates, good organizations to come into this sector. And once that happens, I think we'll win at the level of access, at the level of affordability, at the level of quality. I think things would improve dramatically. But at this point of time, with the way this whole thing is structured, I personally am not supportive of that. So yes, I would be supportive of education as, I don't know, business has many connotations, but education should come into the formal sector, in the corporate sector, and with a great focus on quality of education. And that does not mean that we deregulate the education sector. That does not mean that schools increase fee by whatever percentage that they want to every year. It does not mean that they don't focus on safety of students. It does not mean that they don't provide quality learning. So the government should look at mechanisms to control all of these factors: quality, safety, year-on-year fee hike, but they should create legitimate ways for schools to get a reasonable, school investors to get a reasonable return on investment. The kind of investments required in our country by 2030 are so humongous that the government alone would not be able to meet that. And if we don't create these structures, our kids and our country's future is both at risk. Are both at risk.
Yes, absolutely. And it was really by this question we are coming to an end of our session, and it was really an insightful session where you have very clearly mentioned that multidisciplinary project-based learning is the need, and then only we can think of a global citizen in our coming generation.